4 years ago, I made a decision, one that felt small at the time but has grown into something so much bigger. I decided to give back to the very earth that gives us everything by donating a percentage of my earnings from my Getting Naked school to plant trees through the amazing charity Just One Tree. Fast forward to today, and every single program, every single enrolment helps get more trees in soil, cooling down the planet, restoring ecosystems, and giving future generations a real chance. But what's even more powerful? Seeing what Just One Tree has accomplished. When I started donating, they had big dreams. Today, they've planted almost 5 million trees. That's why today on I Love Me, the podcast, I'm bringing you a special conversation I had with Just One Tree's founder, recorded back in 2021, when this journey was just beginning. You'll hear firsthand why planting trees is one of the most effective ways to combat climate change, how being in nature nourishes us, how to inspire our children to look after the earth, and how one simple action from you can make a massive impact. Because small steps, they plant big forests.
Love, 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 I love me.
I've always wanted to contribute to a cause or organisation that I felt was aligned with my beliefs and was doing work that I could get my heart behind. So over recent years, I've looked for this organisation, and to be honest, I was actually having trouble finding the cause I felt really reflected what I was about and what I could get behind. Then I was watching a movie with my 3-year-old called The Lorax, and it's based on a Dr. Seuss book. And we don't often watch movies, so it was quite the treat. Anyway, this movie, it takes you on a journey of showing the type of world that we might live in a fun and comical kind of way, if there were no trees left. And at the end of the movie, I could see that my son he'd been quite moved by this movie, and he was starting to ask a lot of questions. And so we had a family chat about it. And it was then that I realized that I'd found my cause. I needed to help Mother Earth. I needed to support the very planet that supports us humans. At every chance I get out in nature, I even lived in a rainforest for 4 years. My son now goes to forest school and loves it, and I can see firsthand how connecting with nature is so essential to our well-being, not to mention to the survival of our planet. So I got onto my good friend Google. I started looking for a trustworthy organisation that I could get behind, and that's when I found Just One Tree. The main messaging was let's plant trees. Simple, straight to the point. But as I read further into this website, I realized that this group, this community of people who donate their time to help restore the earth, are not only getting seeds in soil, they're actually making sure that those trees are planted in the most needed areas and have the support and nourishment that they need to thrive. And why do we need more trees? Because our very existence depends upon having fresh air to breathe. And where does this air come from? Our trees. So, feeling extremely moved by what Just One Tree had to share, I decided I wanted to get involved. And at the time, I was launching my membership program, Tea with Tamra, and I decided that for every month a person is a member, I would donate money to Just One Tree to plant a tree on their behalf. And I did this because I wanted to not only do my part, but do it in community. So today I am extremely grateful to have Amanda Bronkhorst here, the founder of Just One Tree, so we can chat about how together we can help breathe life back into Mother Earth. So welcome, Amanda.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the the lovely intro.
Thank you. So let's start with the chain of events that led to you creating Just One Tree, because obviously there is some inspirational journey behind this, right?
Yeah, there is. There is. Yeah, I mean, it's quite an amazing journey, actually, kind of whenever I think back about it. But I basically used to be a producer in TV commercials, and I did that for almost 20 years, which saw me filming in some amazing places around the world and around the UK. And then when I had my daughter, I went on a sort of extended maternity leave because we quickly realized with such long hours in filming that Senna wasn't going to get to know either of her parents. So I decided to take a bit of extra time away from production so that when she was young, she'd get to know at least me. And then when she went to school, I'd go back to production. But in April 2019, I happened to read the bone-chilling speech that Greta Thunberg gave in the Houses of Parliament. And whether you love her or hate her, I know she divides some people. But her speech highlighted that not only were we facing an existential crisis, but that we had 10 years left before setting off these irreversible tipping points that would lead to the end of civilization as we knew it. And with a 2-year-old asleep upstairs, I couldn't help but panic about her future, thinking, in 10 years' time, she'd only be 12. What would happen when she was 40 or 60? What about food security and having children of her own? So I basically panicked and thought there has to be something more that I can do than simply recycling or walking, taking the tube to work and reducing our meat intake. There has to be something more that I can do for her future. And that's when I discovered how cheap it was to plant a tree.
How cheap is it? Tell me.
Well, it's just £1. And that was just the crazy thing. I just thought, if everybody knew how cheap it was, we could all be making an incredible collective impact. I kept thinking about it. Well, I'd plant a tree for my daughter's future for just £1. And I'm pretty sure that other parents would do too. So like you, I picked up my sort of phone and looked up how many kids are there in education in the UK. And there are 10 million children. And I suddenly thought, well, if every parent planted one tree for each of their children, then that would be a huge forest that we could just collectively plant. And then that sort of set me off on the road to thinking, well, what about businesses? There are 5.9 million businesses in the private sector. Well, what if a tree was planted with every property sold or every insurance policy? It's such a small amount, just £1, but collectively it would really quickly add up. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go and I'll see how many people I can tell and how many people will join with me. And somebody said, oh, you might want to do some market research. And I thought, well, blow that. I'll just put a post out on social media and see what happens. And if I plant 900 trees in a year and then I go back to production and it doesn't work, then that's 900 trees out there than if I hadn't tried. And that was 2 years ago. And now we've planted almost 1.4 million trees.
That is huge.
It's huge. Wow. That's restoring an area the size of Monaco. I've never been to Monaco, but it sounds fairly big.
And a little fancy.
It's probably not the best sort of linkage there. But decadence, isn't it? But yeah, we've brought environmental education to nearly 500 schools around the world. That's 154,000 children. And then we've got over 200 businesses that have joined together with us to plant trees as part of their sustainability strategy as well. So it's from small little eco shops right up to leading brands like Victoria Plum and Jojo Long Baby. They've all sort of rallied with me and come on board. And like you said in your intro, which I really loved, was you really grasped the fact that it's that community feel that we're all joining together to restore the planet and have that collective impact together.
Absolutely. And, I really love that you are taking this into schools because, children are our future, everyone says that. But them understanding the importance of our connection with the earth and really understanding why we want to plant trees, that's what's going to allow our earth to thrive, right? I see my son at forest school, and just the change in him, he's only been going for 4 or 5 months, and he is so resilient and has such care for the earth, and just the way he interacts with forests. He's always saying, I love the forest. I want to go back to forest school even on his days off. To me, that is so huge. And it says to me that in the future, he will understand the importance of having these trees. So can you share more about this schools program and what it is that you're teaching these children?
Yeah, so the schools program sort of began, as I set up Just One Tree. I thought, well, I want to bring environmental education into the classrooms. And I thought, well, we'll just run some little programs. And then suddenly we had this sort of idea that, well, actually, I wasn't so keen originally on a non-uniform day. I was like, there are so many. And then suddenly we were sort of talking, well, actually, what if we got, schools across the country doing the non-uniform day on one specific day? It would really help to raise awareness about climate change. This was a couple of years ago when it was really sort of not really being talked about. But so this would help raise awareness. We'd also reach the wider community, so the parents as well, with the leaflets that we give to the schools. They're e-leaflets that then get sent home to the parents, notifying them about the event and where the trees are being planted and why. So that was kind of the basis where Just One Tree, the Just One Tree non-uniform day came about. And what it does is basically a fun and educational day for the kids, but which also restores the planet. And for every pound that they bring in to be dressed up in their non-uniform day, or wearing, in their own clothes, or wearing green, for every pound they bring in, we plant a tree for them. And then they get to see that one tree means that the whole school plants a forest. And then you multiply that by all the schools taking part. And you can imagine the size of the forest that we're able to plant. In fact, we've just had the third Just One Tree Day in October, so donations are still coming in. But from the first 2 Just One Tree Days, it enabled us to restore an area the size of 39 football fields. So it really does have an incredible impact. But in terms of the environmental resources, we do sort of stagger them a bit. So we obviously want to do it quite gently for the younger children, and kind of learning about the trees and the, sort of the different seasons. So there's things like they have pictures of trees that they get to colour in with a different colour of the trees throughout the year, or they get to, for the older kids, they get to measure the carbon in a tree and do the calculations. So there's stuff like creative writing, science, mathematics, all embedded, and sort of the importance of trees. So they get to learn about mangroves, and the calculation for that is how many mangroves, would I need to plant to absorb this amount of carbon from the atmosphere. And then for the older kids, the sort of secondary school, it's a bit more sort of focused on the impacts of deforestation, what causes deforestation, what can we do as individuals to make a difference.
Well, I have an extra question because my son and I were out exploring the beautiful autumn colours. This is our first autumn in the UK. And he said to me in a rather concerned voice, he's like, if trees lose their leaves, how will we get oxygen? Now, I didn't have the full answer, and I did explain that not all trees lose their leaves because they're not all deciduous, so we do have oxygen to breathe. But I am curious, and I know he'll be very interested in your answer. Do we actually have less oxygen in winter?
Interestingly, I think we do, because I think it does change because of the amount, sort of the amount of chlorophyll and stuff that the trees produce. So there is actually an interesting fact that, as the light changes, the sunlight changes, the trees lose the green, the chlorophyll in their leaves, which is what changes the color to sort of orange and reds and stuff. But actually, the orange we see is keratin, which is the same orange that we see in carrots. So I just find that a really interesting fact. But yeah, so they do produce more, and they have sort of more sort of carbon dioxide absorbing capabilities at certain times of the year. So it does ebb and flow a bit. And then also interestingly, trees also do sleep at night, ever so slightly. So they kind of droop a little bit because, again, they're not absorbing sunlight. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
I've
wonder
learned a lot
if
about trees.
then, if we're not having quite as much oxygen, it means that we should be sleeping more as well, do you think?
Oh, well, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Well,
Go into
we talk
hibernation.
exactly,
And,
right? The
yeah.
sun's not awake for as long during the day, so maybe that's our sign to go to bed for more, do less, so then that the planet can, I don't know, revive a little
Yeah.
bit.
Maybe that's why, the days are shorter as well. You should
Yeah,
stay at home and
yeah.
catch up on all that sleep that you've missed.
Now, I can only imagine that your passion to support our planet in its regeneration is being passed on to your daughter. I'm assuming she's probably my son's age, 3 or 4.
She's she's actually 5.5
Oh, okay,
now.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Can you share more about the types of conversations that you have with her or the activities that you do with her so that perhaps other parents listening can know how to educate their children on how to get involved?
Yeah, so I'm really careful about the conversations I have around Senna. The main reason being that 73% of kids suffer from climate anxiety. And, if you think that's almost 3/4 of the children in every school, that's
Wow.
quite alarming. So I've always been very careful that she doesn't really hear the conversations I have when I'm working at Just One Tree. I always try and sort of make sure that she's either in a different room or at school or whatever. So we always try and focus on the positives of what trees do. And, trees give us oxygen and, they provide homes for wildlife. And even this morning, she was talking about tsunamis. And I said, oh, do you know that there's a certain type of tree that actually reduces the height of tsunamis? Because she's a bit obsessed about tsunamis and flooding. I don't know why, they love disaster stuff, don't they? So I was talking about how the mangroves that we plant actually reduce the height of tsunamis and can help protect people. So it's all kind of talking about it in a positive way rather than saying, climate change is this sort of this looming, scary thing in the future that, we might not be able to stop. It's more about, hey, look what trees do, and aren't they fantastic? And we need more of them, and aren't they brilliant? And she actually, because she's at school now, she took part in her first Just One Tree Day, and she's already ordered where she wants her trees to be planted based on the animals that she's helping. She wants 2 in Madagascar for the lemurs, and then 3 in Nepal to help the elephants and the tigers.
I love that. I love that. And just that awareness also that I suppose you're bringing to children, knowing that, there are different countries around and different areas and where the animals are. Like that is part of the education, right?
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that she knows about all this sort of stuff, and it's like you say, that other kids that we're sort of helping with the Just One Tree Day, they get to know all that stuff as well. And I've done a couple of talks in schools, and it's been so heartwarming. In fact, the last one I did, I showed a video halfway through, and the kids burst into the whole hall. It was 250 kids and teachers burst into a round of applause. I nearly literally tried really hard not to cry. I was like really overwhelmed with emotion from it all, thinking, oh my God, we're doing this, and it's because of them, all sat cross-legged on the floor, bringing in their £1 means we're helping these people in Madagascar who this video is about. And that was amazing.
Yeah. And so with your efforts, is it mainly still focused in the UK, or have you expanded it to schools outside of the UK?
Schools around the world are taking part.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So in fact, this year we had schools from 4 continents. In fact, I just had a school sign up from Australia. They've just got in contact. So we'll see. Because actually, although the Just One Tree Day happens on one specific day, we always pick a date in autumn. You can actually take part at any point throughout the school year, the school calendar. It's more about planting trees than just, doing it on that one specific date. So they've just signed up. So we're just going to find out when they plan to hold their one. So that's really exciting. But yeah, wow. So we've got schools from Canada, we've had China, Spain, Poland, Gibraltar. 11 out of the 14 schools in Gibraltar have taken part. It's really, really exciting.
And how did you get the message out so far and wide?
Well, Mainly social media. So we were very lucky on the first one. It just happened, the post we put out just happened to be just after Greta's big climate strikes in 2019. And I think I just must have just, it was the right time, the right place. It just struck a chord. And it just got shared by so many people. It was seen by 500,000 people and had 70,000 engagements. And it was the parents on social media that saw that post that then went into the schools and asked their schools to take part. And that's how we've continued it. It's actually literally down to the parents going and asking the schools. Yeah. So yeah, any parents out there that want to help spread the word, there's a pre-written invite and letter on our website. You just download and then send it to your school. It's really simple. And then schools love it.
Start school, I would definitely be doing that.
Brilliant. And the schools absolutely love it. We have the most amazing feedback from them, and we get photos, and the feedback from the teachers is fantastic, and the head teachers as well, where I think the best one that I had was about climate anxiety, where the teacher said, although kids are quite inspired and about climate change and rallying about it, they're actually also really quite frightened by all this media information. And the Just One Tree Day gives them a really positive way to take a tangible action. So it's really good. I'm really pleased that it wasn't sort of something, clients helping with eco-anxiety wasn't something that we thought about when we came up with the idea, but it's so wonderful to see that actually it really does help kids in that way as well.
Yeah, positive side effect. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I love this phrase on your website that says, forests are the lungs of the planet. They clean the air and absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Can we go into a little bit more detail about how trees really do work their magic?
Yeah, I mean, trees do so much for us. I mean, it's unbelievable. So there's a really long list that I always try and sort of memorize so I don't forget everything. But they clean the air we breathe, and they don't just absorb carbon dioxide. There's also other pollutants from the air that they pull out, they absorb for us. So it's not we always focus on carbon dioxide, but actually there's a lot more that they pull out. They provide us with food and medicine. They provide homes for wildlife. They provide jobs for 1.6 billion people. They're climate regulators on a global scale. They help to form the complex ecosystems that our very survival depends on. They prevent soil erosion, flooding, landslides, and they put nutrients into the soil. So many things, like down to kind of agricultural runoff and taking the pollutants out of the soil from pesticides and things like that before and then the water runs into the rivers. So they're really, I don't know, they're just incredible. I mean, I'm not a tree hugger in any sort of shape or form, but the more I learn about them, the more you realize how impressive they are and how really vital they are to us.
Yeah. I've got this book. My husband was given it. I can't even remember what it's called. It's about how trees talk to each other or something. And I started reading it and I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. They actually have their own communication and they have their own little families. And
it's absolutely incredible. They really do. And sort of they send warnings to each other if there's like an invasive, infection coming their way, or like an older tree passes its nutrients to younger trees. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know if it's possible to calculate this, but do you know how many trees need to be planted in order for us to not set off these non-reversible repercussions for our Earth?
Well, there was a scientific paper that came out in the summer of 2019, actually, just after I set up Just One Tree, that was saying that we needed 8 trillion trees to be planted. That being said, they then said, and that was written by the Crowther Lab in Zurich, and they mapped out the entire planet and showed that there was enough land for us to plant those trees. Mm-hmm. But then they had to write a little caveat afterwards to say, but it has to be the right tree in the right place. It's not about planting monocultures. It's about, sort of growing forests as nature intended, rich with biodiversity.
Yeah.
So there is a difference.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the work that you're doing, is that you're planting them in different areas that need specific trees. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we don't plant our trees in the UK. We actually plant our trees closer to the equator. So we have 7 countries at the moment, which is Madagascar, Mozambique, Indonesia, Nepal, Kenya, Haiti, and Zambia. And then we also do our kelp regeneration project off the coast of the Philippines and Australia. And the reason why we focus on these areas is that there's scientific evidence to say that planting closer to the equator is better for climate change. So, for example, trees trap in heat, they're dark in colour, and we all know in the summer we prefer to wear white to bounce the heat away from us. The same works with trees. In these areas that have already been feeling the effects of climate change, so we're helping to prevent soil erosion and landslides. Trees have a faster uptake, so they absorb carbon more quickly. We can have a social impact in the areas where we plant, so we're helping to shift by providing agricultural training, education, and sustainable incomes. We're helping to prevent deforestation by shifting the dependence on the destruction of forests to one of restoration. So we can have a social impact in that way. And then we can actually plant sort of 10, 15, 20 trees for every one tree we can plant here in the UK. So it's really important. That's why we focus on these areas closer to the equator. But we also pick our plots quite carefully because, as I said before, it's got to be the right tree in the right place. So we've got a plot in Haiti, which we're about to announce. We've been planting in there for almost a year now, actually. But we're about to announce that. And we've chosen that plot because Haiti is not only one of the poorest countries in the world, but it's also really battered by extreme storms and hurricanes. And so we plant mangroves there, which, as I mentioned before, are really great for protecting against extreme weather. So sort of flooding, tsunamis, hurricanes, etc. And then when I say in Madagascar, we plant one of our plots there is about sort of expanding wildlife corridors so that we're helping animals like the lemurs and the crocodiles and bird species. So yes, we pick our plots quite carefully.
Beautiful. And so I find it really interesting because, you know, we hear of people saying we need to save the whales and we need to save all these other threatened species and so forth. Have we humans not become a threatened species due to the way that we've been mistreating the very planet that we live upon?
Yeah, I truly believe that. I sort of think, you know, we're sort of making ourselves extinct if we carry on this way. So, you know, we think we can carry on driving our cars and flying around the world and using fossil fuels. But actually, you know, we're just exterminating ourselves. We just don't realize it yet. So I think, I think we are beginning to realize it. But interestingly, there is something in like horse training, which I keep thinking really relates to the climate crisis, which is firstly, I know I'm going a bit off piece here, but it's called unconscious awareness. So you're not aware that you're doing something, you're doing it unconsciously. Oh, that was it, unconscious incompetence. So you're doing it unconsciously. Then there's conscious incompetence, which means you're aware that you're doing something wrong. Then becomes conscious competence, which means you've changed and you're doing something in the right way, but you're having to remember to do it. So you're constantly aware that you're having to make a change. And then there's unconscious competence, and it just becomes your sort of way of doing something. And I think it really that really does translate, although it's a real mouthful, it does really translate to the climate emergency, because before we weren't really aware of what we were doing and we were just going about our way of lives. Then we became aware, but no one really was listening, you know, and we're sort of trying to get the message out. Now we're all talking about it and we're trying to make a difference, you know, with COP26 actually going on as we're recording this. You know, those sort of leaders are coming together, and how can we make a difference? How can we move to more sustainable life, you know, lively lifestyles? And hopefully soon we'll be doing it where we'll just be living like that. And then we won't even need to think about it, because that will just be our way of life. So we are kind of in that process, and we are in that journey. We're not right at the beginning. We're sort of, you know, along the road. So I think it's quite very positive, and there's things to be optimistic about.
Yeah, beautiful. You know, the that little thing that you describe from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence.
Yeah. It's
I had
really
to
hard, isn't
remember,
it?
yeah, I had to remember the order. So from that to that,
Yeah.
that's actually something I learned when I was learning doing like my NLP training and my hypnosis training, and how we reprogram the brain. So to start with, we have all these patterns that we're playing out based on the beliefs and patterns that we learnt from our parents and our carers. And then as we go through life, we can start to become aware that, oh, maybe some of these patterns are not serving us or serving the planet or the people around us. And then we have that choice to change them. And then once you start doing them for a while, they do become unconscious and it's a new way of being. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
That's probably a better way of saying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, you know, we're essentially reprogramming ourselves to be more connected to the earth so then that we can live in harmony with the earth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if you've seen the film 2040. It's another climate film, and I remember thinking, oh, I don't really want to watch. You know, I work with climate change all the time. The last thing I want to do is watch something that's not, you know, that's about this again. You know,
Yeah.
when I'm not working, and but it's not. It's really inspiring, and it actually shows what life could be like if we used the technology we have now. You know, for the good of the future, and it just looks like a city that you'd love to live in. There's like loads of greenery. There's like electric trains, electric cars. You know, it's really inspirational. So and I think what we're doing, you know, we're only going to be improving our lives by living in a greener world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, just how different we feel when we're connected to the earth, when we're out in nature. You know, my husband's currently reskilling. He's studying software development. And on every break, he's like out in the garden, just trying to get away from the screens, you know, picking grapes from our vine and just reconnecting with earth because it rebalances us, right?
Definitely. And if you looked to everybody during COVID, you know, the one thing that we all wanted to do to get out of our house was to go for a walk in nature. And it shows that sort of walking amongst nature is so much better for your mental health. It's something we really, really need. And it's really important.
Yeah. And I do believe that, you know, the mental health crisis that we're experiencing at the moment is in part due to the disconnection from the earth. You know, we're eating foods that are highly processed. We're spending less time outdoors and we're just not in harmony with the seasons and how to travel through them. This has obviously led to people losing that connection with the earth and just how essential it is to for us to have that connection. So can you speak more about, you know, maybe do you have any ideas or thoughts around how this disconnection happened and has thus, you know, led to us not caring for the earth as is required?
Well, that's a tricky one. I suppose it's kind of down to, you know, maybe do you blame it on cap? There's so many different things, isn't there, that sort of led us here. But do you blame it on capitalism and sort of having to, you know, work to earn a living, people moving to towns? You know, I mean, you see it kind of in sort of everywhere really, but it's one of those things where if you look at some of the places where we plant, you know, you get people that are local communities who can't earn money and they move to the city to earn money, and the city then expands and then cuts down the forest because they're wanting to get jobs. So suddenly we're living in more cities and we're spending all this time in front of our screens, and life is so stressful and we've got so much on our plate because everything needs to happen yesterday. And we're trying to squeeze so much in, you know, being a mum, running just one tree, you know, we're trying to do everything. And I think that sort of takes over from going, hang on, we need to slow down. I need to go for a walk. I need to do this. I need to do that. And actually, you know, it's the building of these towns and these cities that we've cut out all that forest and that greenery from our lives.
So I suppose, you know, the simple invitation there is to just put your foot on the earth, start to go for some nature walks, start to watch what's around you and start to allow that connection to re-emerge. Would you say that's a good starting point?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing I have is, and I had him before I had my daughters, I've got a horse called Milo. And there was a one stipulation that if we do have a child, that I get to keep Milo. And I'm so pleased I did because, you know, I'm out in nature 4 mornings a week. So I have sort of 3 mornings during the week and then 1 on the weekend. And, I get to ride around fields, and no matter how stressed I am, once I've, and thinking, I don't really have time for this, I always feel better on my way home, having been out amongst nature. And it's so important. It's just for your mental health. It's so important to get out there and get in the fresh air, walk amongst the trees, walk, like you say, put your feet on the ground and get out there. And some of my best moments and fondest memories are just going for a walk with my family, and just walking for a couple of hours. And you really chat away and put the world to rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's very easy when you're in the forest, or this is what I've found personally, to forget to look at the phone.
Yeah, but isn't it great? You just switch it off, it off, go for a walk. So nice.
Yeah. So, a lot of my teachings are around helping people to learn how to love themselves, how to step into more self-loving practices and ways of being. So obviously you taking Milo out for a ride is one of your self-love practices, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just really is. And I think it's something that I actually sort of read about the other month as well, is about putting time aside, for just being away from your desk. Because funnily enough, when I'm mucking Milo out and cleaning out the stable, I'm often thinking about work, but I'm away from my desk. And sometimes the best ideas come when you're away from your desk, but we're often at our desk too much. So blocking out that time where I can, be away from my desk, but still be thinking about work. And then when I'm actually on Milo is the time where I don't think about work at all, but I'm just amongst nature, and I have to think about every footfall and how he's using himself and how he's carrying us. So it's almost like a form of meditation. Yeah, literally just focusing on just him and me. And that really cleans your mind, I think, actually. Yeah. So I think as a form of meditation, that would probably be my self-love, but I sort of combine it into it being sort of on Milo and amongst nature. But yeah, meditation would be my other one.
Yeah, beautiful. I know that when I'm at the desk and I'm feeling a bit like, I go for a walk, and that is the time that all these ideas come to me. So yes, I'm enjoying nature, and because it's about like a 12-minute walk and I'm in this beautiful forest. And yeah, that's just when all the ideas come, which, says to me that when we are in nature, we are so connected to not just the earth, but our internal, I don't know if you have a specific name for it, like I call it my true self or my heart, and I'm tapped into that inner wisdom. And so when, I find that nature is such a helpful hand in helping us to reconnect if we lose that connection. Have you had that kind of experience yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just a place to kind of breathe, isn't it? It's just back to, I can't really describe how the difference it makes being going for a walk with people or on your own, so just like you say, connecting to nature and sort of, and just feeling it around you and the fresh air and kicking up the leaves with your feet. And yeah, I suppose it's quite a hard thing to sort of put to words what that feeling is, but it's really, what it gives you is so incredible.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, obviously, I'm assuming you were pretty passionate about your career before Just One Tree. Yeah. How does this feel different?
Yeah, well, I still pine for my old career. I definitely do. I do. I still have the dreams about sort of lights, camera, action, and the crew. I miss the crew terribly. They're such lovely people. The industry was such a lovely place to work. It was very stressful as well. But how does this differ? It's very different. It's been a complete learning curve. I've never sort of set up a non-profit before or even worked in one. So it's all been a sort of a learning curve on that in that sense. But I'm getting to meet amazing people on this journey that are all sort of volunteering and helping, or we do have 2 sort of part-time staff now as well, which is great, sort of helping me on this journey, because it has turned into quite a big beast. It's no longer like something that one person can just run. It's now a little company. So it's been a very different journey. I mean, I've learned so many different things about like marketing and social media and Salesforce. I've never heard of any of this stuff. I'm not really one to go on social media, but It's all stuff I've had to learn. And all this stuff about trees. I didn't know all the stuff about trees before, and now I do. But what's really amazing is to wake up and kind of go, well, when I was a kid, I always used to want to help animals. We all sort of go, oh, the orangutans or the elephants are being sort of wiped out. And now here I am as an adult. And that's what I'm doing. I'm helping people, and I'm helping animals, and I'm helping, sort of marine life, and I'm helping, the planet. It's hard to remember to take a step back and think, when you're at your desk doing all this day to day, that's kind of the bigger goal for what I'm doing.
Yeah. I can certainly relate because, I was a newsreader and journalist for 10 years, and it was during that time that I experienced suicidal depression. And after working my way through that, then I started helping other people overcome that. And that's how my business, sort of organically created itself. And I got to the point where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so much more meaningful because I'm actually creating shifts and change in people, and that is having a flow-on effect to the people around them. And so for me, it's just, going from reporting on negative events to helping people be more positive and healthy and happy. It's just such a huge shift. So, I'm assuming that you've probably, I don't know if you had negativity in your last job.
Yeah, it was a very stressful job, so budgets are being cut, there's sort of small amount of time to turn these shoots around, and you've got this sort of this imminent deadline. But I'd say there's also lots of stresses in Just One Tree. There's a lot, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to keep lot to keep up with. But it's always the little messages that I get from people that sort of say, thank you for what you're doing, and all those little notes that people send or emails that they drop in, and it's just so inspirational, and they mean so much to us, and it just really does push us onwards as well, especially when you're like, I think yesterday was my first day back after annual leave, and I suddenly sat down at my desk, this overwhelming amount of emails that had come in on the 1 week I'd had off. And I was like, oh my God, how on earth am I going to do, am I going to tackle all this? And I got a message from my friend, literally as I sat down at my desk and had that thought saying, and I've only met her through Just One Tree, she's based in Devon. And she said, I'm so proud of you. That's all I wanted to say. Oh. And that was her message. And I was like, oh my God, I really needed that. Thank you. And she's just thought that, they've just said that they've just declared, world leaders declared the end of deforestation by 2030. And I thought my amazing friend is at the forefront of putting all what they have done, damaging our forests, right, changing the world for the better, just like you wanted and planned to. It's like, oh God, okay, right, I'm going to get through this mountain of emails.
It's all worth it.
It's all worth it. I'm going to carry on. So it's all those little messages that are like you sort of gone from that sort of negative world to kind of doing something positive. It really does inspire you to carry on.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. So there are many different ways that people can get involved with Just One Tree. Obviously, we've talked about the schools. Can you share more about how individuals or how businesses can help or get in contact with you and help plant trees?
Yeah, so for individuals, helping us spread the word on social media, and because we don't spend any money on advertising, it's all been word of mouth, because I firmly believe I'd much rather, when I give money to a charity, I want to make sure that it goes on what I'm donating to. So we're trying to stick to that. So everything that's happened has been through word of mouth. So if you can help us spread the word, if you want to plant trees with us, then you just go on www.justonetree.life and you can plant trees through there. And then if you're a business, you can come on board and be a partner with us, and you can plant trees and you can integrate it into your business in any way that you choose. And we keep a track of your tree counter and your CO2 and your impact on the environment, and update you with kind of the projects that we're doing. So again, just go on our website and go to the business section and drop us an email, and we'll get you on board.
Beautiful. And to give an example of how easy it is to plant trees within your business, like every month a person is a part of my Tea with Tamra membership, I plant a tree on their behalf. And I feel it's such a great way that together as a community, we can help regrow Mother Earth, and in doing so, support our own futures. So it is very easy. And I just wanted to put that out there, because it's not what I found with your organization, Amanda, is that you made it really easy for me to be able to implement this. I had approached another organization and it was just a whole heap of paperwork, which was a bit difficult. And I was like, oh, hold on, I'm a one-person show. I don't have time for all this.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, sort of like even we have one little deed that you have to sign to that says, you know, that what you're committing to and that we commit to planting that tree for you. And we've tried to keep it really simple because, I mean, I hate contracts and I really wanted it. Every person, going back to that original thought of what if I planted a tree for my daughter? What if everybody did? So you want to make it easy for everyone. And what I don't want to put barriers in people's way. You just, you know, we're in a climate emergency, so let's just get planting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just get straight to the point, which is, you know, what your website's all about. Just plant trees.
Yeah, just plant trees. Let's just plant
Let's do it.
Yeah, and by planting trees, we can help the oceans as well. So let's help the oceans.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you've mentioned the website, and you've got an Instagram page that people can follow what you're doing. Do you want to mention that as well?
So we've got the Instagram. I think it's at just_1_tree, I think. I'm terrible at remembering which ones they are. And we've got Facebook as well, which is just1tree.life. And then Twitter is also at just_1_tree. And we're also on LinkedIn as well. So you can follow us on and find us on any of those. So yeah, the more people that help us spread the word, you really are doing us an incredible help just by doing that.
Yeah, and I really encourage people listening to check out the websites and your social media, read some of the articles, educate yourself, and if you can find a way to even make a one-off donation to Just One Tree, remember, just one tree, it will go so far. You know, when people come together and support each other, we really can make such a huge difference. If there was something else that you just wanted to say to people, Amanda, what would it be?
I think it'll be that. It'd be sort of don't be put off by literally planting just one tree, because that's how this has all happened. By, you know, each of us just taking that stepping stone of just planting a tree or a couple of trees, and collectively it's meant that we've planted 1.4 million. So you know, just get involved. Don't be afraid. Just one individual really can make a difference.
Yeah, and you've proven that. Thank you, Amanda, so much for the work that you and your team are doing. I really am so grateful to know that there are organisations out there like Just One Tree who are putting their heart and soul into trying to support our planet, the planet that supports our very survival. So thank you, and thank you for sharing more about why planting trees is so very essential right now.
Thank you so much for having me.